Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Perhaps even for some, good evening. It is really lovely to have you all here for this masterclass. My name is Kecia Rust, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa. And I am here with Mwarigha and Eric, whom I will both introduce in a moment, to really just guide into this masterclass that they will be conducting. Some of you will have come to our conference last year, the AUHF conference, which took place in Zanzibar last October. And this masterclass has grown out of the debate that was held there when Mwarigha came and made a presentation on work that he'd been doing in Canada in relation to investments in infrastructure and affordable housing in Canada. And there was so much interest in this discussion that, in fact, the whole meeting room said, "Can't you tell us a little bit more?" And he went away and connected with his friend and colleague, Eric, so that both a Kenyan and a Canadian case study could be presented to you. So the purpose today of the webinar is to really present this issue of performance-based contracts for housing and water infrastructure. And Eric, Mwarigha, I've worked previously on what we called results-based financing, which I guess is somewhat similar. Performance-based contracts tied also to the ultimate results. But I'm sure that there's a lot that you will clarify in the course of the discussion about how they work and also in different sectors. So we're looking forward to that. Mwarigha is the Vice President of Housing Growth, Development, and Asset Sustainability at WoodGreen Housing, which is in Toronto, Canada, which some of you may know where I was born there. And he has been working on the development of affordable housing with a 5,000 unit target for this current decade. And is also working in terms of the asset sustainability and climate change strategy. We're really excited that Mwarigha has been lending his insights and experience to the African Union for Housing Finance, and we really hope that this is something that will continue over time. Mwarigha, I believe you're going to be with us again in Nairobi for the conference next month.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Great. And he is a really great embodiment in this case of the Hema proverb that he's put forward coming from the DRC, which is that wisdom is like fire. People take it from others. It just spreads. And so if we start talking about this, then we'll mention it maybe at dinner or in a board meeting or whatever, and then they'll start talking, and we start to create this convergence of thinking and a unity in approach that suits our collective action together. We learn from one another, and we collectively, as we do within the African Union for Housing Finance, focus on that North Star together. Eric Mwandia is the chairman of Earthview, and a very interesting company doing a lot of work in the infrastructure sector. Also the founder and chairman of CAPS Limited, which looks at, and I think a really interesting set of PropTech strategies, Eric, that you are driving in your companies and in your work, which I find particularly interesting also in terms of the need for in situ infrastructure. So correct. Across all of this, and then I see you're also in the tea industry, which is cool.
Yeah.
And
a little different, yes.
Yeah, and also as just an innovative financing strategy. A project that some colleagues and I are working together on at the moment in Kenya is dealing with a neighborhood called Pipeline, which is in Nairobi. And it's a tenement area with very poor provision of services and poor quality construction generally. And we're looking at ways of refurbishing and improving the infrastructure investment in situ in a place like that. So I'm very interested in hearing what you both have to say. I think it's relevant for every city across this continent where you've got existing infrastructure that's been possibly neglected over some time and now requires some more life in to be able to accommodate growing populations and very rapid urbanization. So the series itself, two parts. Part one is the fundamentals and the application of performance-based contracts or PBCs. And then part two will go in much more detail into the Canadian and the Kenyan examples. What we're really hoping is that after today's webinar, you'll think about some ideas and questions and things you want to know more about, and you'll tell us these so that Eric and Mwarigha can prepare for the next one so that it's actually responding to the issues that you're particularly interested in. So I'm going to leave it there and hand over to you, Mwarigha. I'm still driving the presentation. You just tell me when you want me to change the slides.
All right. Thank you very much for setting that context. I wanted to just, one of the things we wanted to do, first of all, is sort of level set our understanding and application of just this generic concept of performance-based contracting, which most of us might have used it, many of us might have used it in various combinations, including, in the PPP regime or in the PPP kind of projects. So one of the things we just wanted to sort of go through is a little bit of talking about what the framework of our performance-based contracting and understanding is. We welcome your response in sort of either through the chat, sharing your experiences, because we know we're not the only ones who are doing this. So sharing your experiences, and then by the end of the second workshop, hopefully we have a consensus of some of the key principles and anchors of what works best on the PBC world and what doesn't work. So I'll do the structure of our conversation is we'll do a little bit of this sort of level setting on the conceptual understanding of PBCs. I will then provide you with a summary of the Toronto model. And what we've decided to do in today's workshop is to paint a picture of what success looks like. So rather than go into the nitty-gritty of how we went about doing it, because that's the subject matter of the second one, we will paint a picture of what success looks like, and hopefully through that process, both in Kenya and in Canada, start to enroll you and to get you to think about what success could look like in your context. So that when we come in and start talking about the mechanics, you're thinking about what you need to do around trying to make yourself successful as well. So I'll delve into just straight into the slides on the PBC and what the key features, the first one, if you don't mind, on the first slide, just number one. Yeah. So we have a basic understanding. It's payment tied to service quality. Hopefully we're adding in sustainability goals, and hopefully we're adding in long-term results as part of that mix. In order to do that, of course, requires a certain level of stewardship about it. So one of the key lessons of performance-based contracting is you can't let your contractor be the person running it. You have to have that stewardship. It has to have performance metrics. It's the whole essence of performance-based lives on the fact that on an ongoing basis, you can measure what is going on. It is not one of those projects you evaluate at the end of it. The money that you're getting into it as a financial tool, it comes from the real-time measurements that you have. And then rewards for exceeding targets is so making sure that you have an inbuilt contract that talks about who gets what in terms of the targets, but also too around the penalties on the underperformance. So it is a business relationship, and so you need to be able to do that. And often it includes responsibility for ongoing upkeep over several years. That's an area that's much more open to negotiation. It's all related to the capacity that your organization has In our case, we're in charge of the long-term upkeep of the housing asset that we put it into this. But if if you're a small organization and you don't have that, you could negotiate. But it still means you have to have stewardship. Over to the next slide. So those are some of the key features. The benefits are, and that's why we do it. It's payment tied to durability, reliability, and long-term performance. So whoever it is that you're contracting with is coming into a relationship with you with the pressure of having to perform and to provide you with a reliable project, yeah, depending on whether it's housing or infrastructure, whatever. Hopefully, in the process, it encourages innovation. The more engaged you are, the more you get to understand how efficiency can be leveraged and how you can lower life cycle costs. So there is a recurring theme from my conversation. Stewardship has to be very strong in the organization, like we have embedded at WoodGreen in doing this, and I'm sure we will hear from Eric as well, from Earthview and what they do. Risk allocations. These are the risks shift with contractors, they shift with the situation, and being able to have a good picture of what that range of the risks are and an understanding of how you manage those risks between the partnership is important, is a really important part of that stewardship story. And then, of course, transparency and accountability. You have clear benchmarks, you have a shared understanding. In our case, we have real-time building automated systems that provide us the data on the performance on an ongoing basis. And that's how we ensure accountability. So, the next slide. And then, a reflection on the challenges of PBCs. Again, it's the devil is in the details, right? And being able to set proper measurements and making sure you don't surrender that responsibility to your contractor or whoever you're contracting with about it. You have to have a level of intelligence internally to be able to optimize the outcome of this. If you let that be driven by the contractor, it shifts the relationship in not such a good way. Um, it does it does have a cost, an upfront cost for establishing benchmarks and tools, and things like measurement tools, which have to be part of the mechanism that you do that, sort of a bit of a lost leader cost in the whole mix. So you have to be able to be prepared. So it is not a zero investment initiative. That's the bottom line that you're getting from this point here. And then, of course, you need to be in it with sort of a long-term nature. In the case of WoodGreen, we're in it for 10 years. And then subsequent to that, we sort of become the sole steward of the outcome of that. And being able to understand the span of years that you need in order to repay. Most of the span of years is determined by the degree to which you've invested your own equity and degree to which you have to repay to the contractors. And then lastly, limited contracted, you have to be careful about who you go to the party with, and that they know what they're doing. But equally important is that you have a significant investment in the internal culture and in the internal culture and the level of skills and training that you need internally in the organization. So, if there's anything I want to say about that, it does require a reculturing internally as well. Next slide. So there's, and I won't dwell on this, there's several various examples in which PBCs have been applied. Road maintenance is one of them. It's also blended into the public-private partnerships for airports and so on. We have used it more intentionally at WoodGreen around as part of the energy efficiency infrastructure. So anything that touches energy efficiency is so for us, and there's specific reasons in the Canadian context why it is such a low-hanging fruit is kind of what we do, and everybody sort of goes where they go. So just to conclude this first part, um, PBCs align contractors with client goals. They, as we said, deliver high quality, cost effective, and most important, the sustainability piece. The impact of PBCs is most felt because they have a long-term sustainability. They reculture your organization. They re-change the way you do business around road maintenance, around energy efficiencies for us at WoodGreen. Um, and while it requires careful planning and clear metrics, it does offer significant advantages for two reasons. One, when you're in a situation like most of us are, where the traditional sources of financing are drying up, it is a unique way of monetizing the efficiencies that you derive from PBCs to actually refinance and renew your infrastructure, whatever that is, housing, road, whatever that you choose to do that. So that's sort of the first part of the overview of our understanding, Eric and I's understanding that we bring to the table about PBCs. If there's anything missing that you think is important, you can either put it on the chat so that we look at it next time, or I'm not sure whether Kecia, you wanted this to be a bit of a natural break for people to just speak about their experience, or we can do that at the end.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, let's see. Does anyone want to ask any questions? If there is, I could take two, and you will have to unmute yourself in order to do that because I'm struggling to find my controls here.
Yeah. And most of it's about just making sure that we've hit the right space in terms of what people believe PBCs are and what they do.
Yeah. Okay, any questions
Any inputs?
or inputs? Yes,
Mhm.
comments.
We have a raised hand from Samuel.
Okay, I'm so sorry I can't see it because I'm looking at the presentation itself. So please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah. So maybe while we're doing that, Eric, is there anything that in that framing of the PBC and what essentially as a concept or a business model that you think could you wanted to add a little bit?
Hello, everyone. Mwarigha, I think that's a good general entry into the subject. And perhaps what I suspect is that as we go along and we begin to talk about the use cases, and I know you're going to tell us something about what's happening in Toronto next. I think from there, we may begin to get some, something. So my suggestion is that we could just go ahead with that and add this question onto the next ones that may come in.
Yeah, and
I think that's in fact exactly what Sam wanted.
That's correct. Yeah.
With
So
the
I
case
see
study.
he wants us to move on to the next point. Next
Right.
There you go.
Okay, off you go.
All right. We're all yeah. And I think we thank you for that comment that the fundamentals were concise enough. So the first model that so we have two case studies. One is the case study in Toronto, and I'll speak to why it is significantly relevant, right? I'm the vice president, like you heard before, for housing growth and development. But I always tell people in our context, believe it or not, because of the aging stock, for every new building we build, we lose 15. And I think when people think in terms of the ratio of how fast you can build or add infrastructure relatively to how much you lose from the old one, it starts to change the mindset on preservation. So, and that's exactly where I landed. But just a very quick sense also of why I think it's relevant. Although I'm in Toronto, I work for an organization, WoodGreen. WoodGreen is a consortium of services that are branded under the community, WoodGreen Community Services. The biggest, believe it or not, is health services. So we do public health services on behalf of government. We have a big community programs that have to do with employment, training, and that whole barrage of things. And then we have the housing piece, which is the one that I'm in charge of. And our housing is what we call hard to house housing, also known as social housing in some places. Um, Canadians don't like to use public housing because public housing is more like what you see in the UK and in the United States. We tend to think that we have a much more community-based type of product in the market. But the essence of it is we have a tenancy population whose incomes cannot support just a continuous investment into our infrastructure. Um, and so we have to, if you can, so that's WoodGreen in a nutshell. We've obviously received certain awards in our housing portfolio, but today I'm going to focus on the preservation side of it. We're big. We've got 30,000 individuals that we serve, and at least 2,000 of those live in our current stock, which is the focus of our preservation. Moving on next. Yeah, and I spoke a little bit about that. I talked about if you look at the middle part, the housing state of good repair, we have very aging buildings. We have a lot of people trying to get into that housing. We have very high repair costs, and we have to make sure that if we invest in the buildings, we can't take the money out of their rent because we need them, they won't afford it. So there has to be an element of rent stability. It's easy to invest in new things if you can just charge back the tenants, right? But so those create some interesting constraints. By the way, we also do workforce housing because as the housing market has become more and more constrained, the notion of just having the hard to house has also transitioned into the workforce. It's also partly because our product has also become more blended, market and non-market, but that's another story altogether. So moving on to having created that context, next slide, Kecia, and zeroing in on the housing aspect and what the challenges are. And I talked earlier about sometimes we think we're different and sometimes we really aren't. So when I put a list of these challenges up, I'm sure most of us who are in the housing world recognize them. They recognize them for their aging housing stock. Um, they recognize them because when you look at your books, there's not enough money to pay for all the repairs that are determined through the building condition assessments. Uh, if you look at the environment, similar to everywhere, the energy prices are just going on the up and up. And yet the demand for affordable housing, which is also partly linked to the fact that the economy is building less and less of a middle class size. So most middle class people are beginning to slide back into a scenario where they need a lot of help to meet their affordability, based on their incomes. And I know the problem is relative, but it causes the same tensions, believe it or not. We have many of these buildings were built with a 30-year horizon of funding, additional funding, and that 30-year horizon has arrived. So we either renegotiate new government financing, but the government is in a very difficult situation. Um, in addition to that, of course, we're trying to do some uplift to the assets. We're trying to add new accessibility to old buildings, to renew the accessibility. We're trying to add air conditioning to buildings that didn't have air conditioning because we've always been a very cold country. But da-di-da, global warming, we're actually having this summer we had hotter weather than Nairobi's summer for the last time. We were in the mid 35 Cs and so on. So the air conditioning conversation now has to come in a very strong way. And of course, we're still dealing with the COVID health and safety costs. And, the percentage increases in our actual direct utility costs are about 8% annual, electricity 16, gas 8%. I think you can hear from my tone that I don't feel that in that context, we're in a very different problem space from most of the people that I spoke to when I came to the Zanzibar conference last year. So that being the challenge, very quickly, we then put together a strategy. I'm not going to dwell on this one. I talked about having a strategy that's both for growth, which is strategy number 2, 3, but also a specific pillar, which is the preservation pillar that I have over there, and moving right along. In order to create, and my point here is you need a strategy that is both preservation and growth. So moving right along, Kecia. So what did we do? And I talked about our first task today is to paint a picture of success. We completed probably one of the largest energy retrofit building renewal programs in Canada that is not by the big multinational real estate companies, but also the first one that used the monetization or used leveraged energies to finance the building retrofits. And for that, we received Canada Green Buildings Award as being one of the first ones. And there's a reason why we're unique. It's not because we're the first ones to put new green components into the buildings. It is the fact that we have an ability to monetize that and make sure that our bottom line is not affected and that the energy savings are paying for the new equipment in a very succinct way. In order to do that, you have to be very intentional about what you do. So I've put together here a list of the key measures that we used to leverage the energy savings. You can't do everything. So windows and building envelope items, you have to find another way to invest because they don't have the same impact. And we'll talk about how we distinguished why these were the right measures to do. So there's a science on how you do that. And LED lighting. Toilets are huge on the water preservation piece. Booster pumps for the efficiency of the system, the high efficiency chillers, air makeup system, building automation, high efficiency heating boilers, and high efficiency DHW boilers. So these were the key elements that we leveraged because we could get the biggest bang financially out of them. And then the last one is the highest priority, of course, in terms of the equipment that we replaced and focused on was, the ones that were poor and in critical condition, and also others that needed urgent action, and the ones that have a replacement value within the next 3-4 years. And the purpose of this slide is to say, when you do your assessment and when you want to do PBCs, you have to be, people can't get the impression that you're investing in everything about the building. You're going to some very strategic components of it and trying to make sure that you extract, for lack of better words, money from it. Next. Of course, it is important for us to use the community impact lens when we do that. We talked about sustainability. We talked about improving the quality of life. So these are some of the outcomes that we achieved through some of the measures that we put in. So yes, there's the money, but yes, there's also impact and improved air quality, health outcomes. And I also talked about rent stability earlier on being one of the impacts. Hey, you're getting new things, but it's costing you nothing. And everybody is really happy. Moving right along so that we can, yeah. And here is just a summary. We started this project in 2020. Our sort of installation period was about 6 months. And the reason the installation period is a distinct period is because you're putting in the equipment, you're changing. You don't have the full impact of the project, but you still have to, at that point, begin to monitor what you're getting out of it. So we actually were able, for 6 months immediately, even incrementally, get some savings, as you can see. The diagram speaks for itself. The three main areas that we got our savings were, from an output point of view, is the water, the electricity, and the gas. Most of you probably don't have a gas problem. Our gas issue is related to our heating our winter periods. And the numbers speak to themselves. If you look at the projected savings, which is what we had done on paper, and the actuals, the project starting 2021-22, our first full benchmark year, and 22-23 has just exceeded our expectations. We are, in essence, making money from the project. I'll leave it at that and say that's the success we've been able to achieve, and hand it over to Eric to segue into the Kenyan case study. Eric, over to you. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mwarigha.
Yeah.
Yes, that's quite a good exposition of what's happening in Toronto. Yes, so hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be able to speak with such an enlightened set of participants. What I'll do is, first of all, Mwarigha has spoken to us and given us definitions and benefits of PBC. He has also given us the challenges and of setting up PBCs. And beyond that, he's gone ahead and given us a marvelous example what they have done in Toronto on the housing front. And that's really good and wonderful. So the question comes, can we do this on the African? Would we be able to do this on the African context? What I'll do is I will refer to, perhaps, Kecia, the next slide. There's there's an organization, the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, who have got a well-regarded method of a framework that they've created for delivery of sustainable projects for large cities. And what you can see here on this slide is in the framework, there's the various dimensions that they use to analyze the project, the nature of the project, and the various factors that can be used. So, for example, in debt financing, there are various different ways of achieving that, and in all the other dimensions as well, 14 of them. What we'll be doing as in regards to PBC is we find that we concentrate more on the circled areas, the dimensions including PPPs, leasing and asset finance models, of course, international climate finance, because of the sustainability aspect. You find that there's finance available for these kind of things, and the area of risk mitigation. So this organization, that is Cities Climate Finance, has has got a list of up to 30 projects which they showcase to show basically what can be done with they're using these various dimensions to set up projects and to achieve sustainable and well-developed projects. As I said, we are looking at the PBC projects, and out of the 30 projects that they have showcased, 3 of these are Africa-based. And 2 of these, if we can go to the next slide, Kecia. 2 of these include quite successful projects, which to a large extent were involved in the utilities area. So we may need to, scratch our heads a little bit more and follow up with Mwarigha to see what developments perhaps have been achieved in the housing sector. I'm sure we'll get to that, but in the infrastructure area, we have an example, a very good example is what has been done in Rwanda to develop the capacity to deliver. They had a big problem of the amount of water that was being delivered in Kigali, which was much less than the demand. And this project was used to actually significantly expand that, and it utilized a method of multiple sources of finance, but with a very heavy PBC aspect to the project, because the lead developer was a UK-based company, but they were able to get their payments based on the performance that they were able to achieve. Another project was Mfuleni in South Africa, which again was a project that was PBC based. On this one, the problem was a situation which is very common when we'll soon move to the Kenya example. Very common in at least in Kenya, and I suspect in most of Africa, where we are having a large amount of water loss, or what they call non-revenue water. So they were able to have some technological input, which then enabled them to sort this out, and the contractor was paid on a sharing basis based on the what you call it, the uplift to the revenues that they were able to achieve. So these are 2 very realistic and projects that actually hit the particular area that we're looking at of PBC. So in our own case, we're going to look at projects, again, in the water sector, and these will be projects that have been done in Earthview, by Earthview and Spearhead. And maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So the question is this: how do you bring it home now? All these ideas, PBC and all the beautiful things that Mwarigha has told us about, how do we actually bring it to project level in Kenya? Let's look at the water sector, where we have very high water losses. And the interesting thing is that the strength of PBCs is especially showcased when there's a big performance gap. And because that is the performance gap that can be leveraged to actually create new revenues that now pay for the improvements that are put in place. So the non-revenue, we have the non-revenue water, we have energy efficiencies. I think if you, many of those who are not only in Kenya, but in a lot of African countries will know that the difficulty of pressure management and managing your actual water delivery is affected by the unreliability of the power utilities. This significantly affects what a utility company is able to do. There are also financial constraints in most of these water utilities. And this is because, at least in Kenya, there's the water charges are set by statute, and you can't do much about them. So you have to charge a certain fixed amount, and yes, that's a definite problem. So these challenges, what they do is they result in, they compromise the delivery of your water to the end users, and strain the public resources, that because at the end of the day, the owners of the system have to subsidize the delivery of the water to their population. So we are advocating for the use of performance-based contracting, and there are some gaps. I think if we look at the next slide, which will illustrate the enormity of the challenge. Again, these water level losses are due to a lot of physical leaks. The networks which were put in place are quite old, and they were put in with a rather old type of materials. So you have rusted pipes, and this is made worse by the fact that most of the time the water is not fully, the pipes are not full of water. Very often you get water once a week, twice a week. And what happens is you get a lot of gunk and stuff growing in there because we got a good water for growing, good temperatures, and a lot of air. So, and again, this is the same with the meters, because what happens is when there's no water, there'll be ingress of other materials, and a lot of the meters get lost. So you have a lot of administrative losses. So typically you find that nationally in Kenya, non-revenue water of 40% is 42% is quite typical, and some sectors can go up to 75. I know that the new collector system, which is bringing water from Mwarigha to areas like Karen and all that, they are experiencing about 60% water loss, which is horrible. The installed delivery systems cannot cope with the volume of water. And again, this is take, for example, that where everybody was really looking forward to this large injection of water, but because of the large, the water pressure is not being managed properly. Because of that, you've got leaks everywhere in this ancient system, which is, as I said, it's not really fit for purpose, and you have lots of leaks. So you do have technical losses, and at the same time you have administrative losses. So we can go to the next slide. Yes. So this we have observed that the poor power quality militates against optimal pressure management. And so you have a situation where perhaps the need to redesign the networks themselves, have more tanks, different pumping centers, and on top of that, you find that the utility power for of some reason of historical reasons is very expensive. It is much cheaper, for example, to set in situ a solar pumping system, or even a wind system, which will generate for you the same power, which is reliable for you, and it will enable you to, at the end of the day, in the long term, to reduce your costs significantly. But these systems do not come in cheap. You have to put in quite an invest. And we have said, we have noted already that the utility companies are sorely short of funding because their revenues are low, because they don't. It's a vicious cycle. So next, please. Next slide. Yeah. So these are the financial constraints we talk about: low tariffs due to regulated tariffs, very little generation capacity. They do not relate to business realities. You are not, therefore, as a utility company, in a position to make this right. You're not in a position to put in new piping. You're not in a position to put new tank systems. You're not in a position to put in smart metering. All these things are things that you would want to depend on somebody else, perhaps, to do that. And this is where the PBC, and again, there is another downside in the setup in our ownership structure of the water companies and county governments. There are very good, there are some very good county governments with good governance, but this cannot be said to all of them. I don't want to speak badly of anybody, but I think the reality of the day is that governance needs a lot of work in this area. So we can go to the next slide, please. So what are infrastructure improvement opportunities? And these are quite clear. We need to be able to reduce distribution water losses. We need to reduce the energy losses, again, due to the poor network. We need to be able to actually get the water that we are cleaning at great cost and delivering from distance at great cost. We need to be able to give it to the end user, which is the service really that you want to give, but at the same time, you'll be able to claw back and get some revenue out of this. And of course, you need to reduce your energy supplies, whether this may involve doing something with your energy utility or delivering your own power system. And revamping of currently quite inadequate and inefficient administration and management platforms. Technology has gone very far with AI and with, so the potential to be able to know what is going on in your pipes, in your water delivery, because of the nature of the water consumption. It can tell you a lot about what is happening within your network. And these are solutions that could do well if they are implemented in systems. So next slide, please. So as Mwarigha mentioned, we are not at this point going to go into complete detail about how and what we've done, but suffice to say that there are projects ongoing that have managed to achieve something. Others are in the process of achieving. And here we have four case studies. One is actually was done by Earthview, a Kenol and Kebati towns. These are in Mwarigha. And there was a PBC that was within that PBC, the non-revenue water was able to be reduced from 60 to 30% within a couple of years. We'll talk more about that. But the main thing was to improve the infrastructure, smart metering, and improve the billing systems. Similarly, in Mombasa, there's a city smart metering where they are doing about 25,000 meters, starting with about 5,000 in the current phase. And the idea is to use DMAs, district metering, to identify and localize the water losses and enhance the capabilities of the organization to increase revenue collection. That means putting in better systems in place. And yes, similarly, we have Navasha Water. It's also a PBC. This one did focus a lot on the pipe network replacement and meter upgrades in order to manage the non-revenue water. It was also necessary to implement a solarization project, because whereas utilities, for example, in Nairobi and Mombasa may not notice too much the problem of the power disturbances, there are places where the water company sometimes does not have power for a day or two, or in certain areas. And yes, it is a real problem. And this type of upgrades of solarization is one which can also be used to be upgraded on a PBC basis, because the power is delivered at the same rate as before. But here there's the assurance of the delivery of the power, and you get a much better result in terms of the distribution of the water. PayWork, again, is a project where it's generally trying to deliver and to enhance the concept of PBC generally within the utilities companies in Kenya. So those are currently the key projects that are ongoing for this. So again, we are trying to put in place ideas and an understanding of what is happening in this sector, especially in the utilities here in Kenya, so that we can begin to, we do have ideas of how to get in greater detail for the second session how exactly these projects have been delivered. And but beyond that, we believe that giving this the outline may be able to, for example, get some feedback from you that will enable us to do a better job of it when we come to give the full solutions during the next exercise. So really, that's I will want to pass it to Kecia now, so that yes, we see what next. Thank you very much.
Eric, thank you so much. And thank you, Mwarigha, both of you. That was completely fascinating. And I think you've presented in such a gentle way of making it like understandable, and we can think about it in our context. I really took the point, Mwarigha, that you made right at the beginning about how the introduction of a PBC really offers the opportunity to reculture an organization for driving at specific performance outputs, and then creating an accountability framework so you can ensure that they happen. And then Eric's input showing how that also can then work further in practice in the Kenyan context. I'm really looking forward to the deeper dive into the case studies next at the next session. What we want to do for the next session is make sure that it starts to answer all of your questions. So we would be grateful if you would send us an email or send us a WhatsApp message so that we can prepare. And some questions here have been put up on the screen by Eric and Mwarigha. So think through some of those issues. We've run out of time for a discussion now, and we want to make sure we stick to time. So maybe we'll consider even extending our session at the next one to be an hour and a half long. I think that might be worthwhile to give some more time for conversation. Looking forward into the next session, we will look at the Canadian case, and then the Kenyan case, and then the finance and investment models. And then there'll be an open floor and Q&A. And I think that if you are registered for it in advance, Mwarigha and Eric will send the slides in advance so that you can review them and take notes on them at the next session. We wanted everybody to see that it really is helpful to have the material presented. And we hope that you will come also to the next session, but we'll send you those slides in advance so that you can use them as you think through and as you listen to the presentation. Mwarigha, would you like to add anything else into the discussion or any final concluding thoughts? I think you'll need to unmute if you haven't yet. See if I can figure out how to do that for you.
Yes, I've done that. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, no, this was, we wanted a start to provide a global sense. We wanted to make sure that the points that both Eric and I made were showing that, in fact, this is a problem across the board. It's not just and there are reasons why we're kind of in the same place. We wanted to talk about the fact that you have to drive as an organization the opportunities. We didn't come across as many opportunities in Africa in relation directly to housing, but that I think is the opportunity window for the AUHF members
Totally.
to explore that. And even in those two examples that we gave, none of those, to my understanding of what we looked at, have the same breadth of depth of what we called under stewardship and sustainability. They sort of served the purpose of putting new equipment or stopping a problem. They didn't actually have a sustainability aspect that we were very happy with. So we want to make sure that what we do together going forward has all those components. So the agenda for this is here. We will provide you with the slides for today, ASAP. And then somewhere closer, once we've processed the input from today and rejigged our slides, we will provide you in advance of our next meeting the slides for the second show, for the second workshop. And we loved it. I hope you did too.
Thanks so much, Mwarigha. And Eric, any last words from you?
Well, thanks, Kecia. I just look forward to any feedback so that we can, as Mwarigha said, fine tune this thing. I think there's good lessons to be learned going forward about the practicalities, because that's really the devil is in the details usually, and there's going to be a lot to learn there.
There's been a nice comment that's just come across the chat about the relevance for this work in the affordable housing, social housing space. Certainly in South Africa and the social housing institutions, there have been a number of people here from, so that's institutional rental, social subsidized rental housing in South Africa, very interested in learning more about this. And so people are excited about the next one, me too. Please do feel free to email us and tell us anything else you want to hear about in relation to this. And thank you so much to Eric and to Mwarigha for your time and your expertise. And we really look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. Ciao, everybody.